What's going on, guys? My name is Dave Capote and I'm a film and digital photographer from Austin, Texas. And today, it's been about 6 months since I've had this camera. It is the GFX-50R. And I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that I really love about it and some of the things that drive me absolutely crazy. So like I said, it's been about 6 months since I picked up this camera. It's been pretty much my main shooter for all of my commercial work, even some of my personal stuff where I just kind of go out and take photos. And this thing is an absolute beast. Like I can't say enough good things about it. There are some bad things about it, but the good definitely outweigh the bad. So I had originally picked this camera up when it was $3,500 on sale, probably like when I said 6 or 7 months ago. Currently, the price of this camera is $44.99 or something like that. And I'm glad I got it when I did, because at the $3,500 price range, it's right on. It's absolutely perfect. But for about $4,500, I would either get one used or I would wait for that price to come back down. I'm sure that it will at some point, but right now they're definitely trying to keep the prices high with the demand. A lot of people are upgrading to the 100S and they're selling this guy. So this might be a good bargain find on eBay or some kind of peer-to-peer sale. So let's talk about the good. Right off the bat, if you've never shot with Fujifilm, Fuji's colors, I know everybody says it, I've said it in previous videos. Fuji's colors are by far my favorite colors I've ever shot. I used to shoot Sony A7R III, Sony A7s, A7S2s, all the way down to their mid-level cameras of the 6500 series, stuff like that. I've also shot Canons, 5Ds, haven't shot the R5s, but I'm sure that they're great cameras. But I just know the difference between Sony's color science, Canons, Fujifilms, and I can without a doubt say that these are personally my favorite colors. So for me, I shoot a lot of film, so a lot of Portra, Ektar. I mean, if you watched my channel before, you know that I love film, and the best way that I can describe this color system with Fujifilm is that it's accurate without being boring. So even though the colors are super accurate and they look exactly how they're supposed to look, they aren't dull. Like, they still have a punch with them. They're still kind of saturated and contrasty, but in all the right ways. The biggest problem that I had with Sony was that orangey tint that you would get where things would be way too warm, and then you try to like pull colors and then they would shift really weird, and it was very hard to match other cameras or accurately display what you're trying to shoot. And me as a commercial photographer, my number one thing is that I need the product to look exactly how the consumer is going to receive that product. So it was taking too much work to tweak each individual like little color in each photo, and it was just like slowing down my workflow. So once I switched to Fuji and I'm shooting on an X-T4, like I completely switched, and each camera that I use I know is exactly the same, and I know that once I bring it into Lightroom, I mean there's certain shoots that I'm shooting this camera and the most that I'm doing is maybe adjusting exposure and like putting a curve on in the edit, and that's pretty much all I'm doing because it just looks that good straight out of camera. The next thing that I really love about this camera is obviously the resolution. So 52 point something, 52.4, whatever megapixels in this camera, and it is absolutely every little bit of that 52 megapixels. Like, this thing makes my life so much easier with cropping multiple photos or multiple looks into a photo, and ultimately giving my whoever I'm contracted out for more options whenever they're trying to select the photos and see really which look they're trying to go for. And it's not necessarily like more resolution is better. It's just when you have a high resolution, especially with this big of a sensor, like, I mean, the sensor is pretty massive. And when you have that big of a sensor and that much information being put into each photo, it gives you more flexibility. And this camera really is that flexible. Besides the resolution, the thing that I really like about it too is that I like the form factor. I think that I have pretty big hands, and this body is pretty, like, even I have a 110 f2 on here, and even with this big of a lens, if you have bigger hands, you're gonna be able to manage it pretty well. The only thing that I would say is that it's got a little bit of a weird shape. Like, if you've ever shot rangefinder style cameras, the grip isn't as chunky as like your DSLR or mirrorless camera that have those big grips for the battery. This one is kind of just a flat, it's just a flat style. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but for me, I mean, I don't find any issues with it. Like, I'm always shooting two-handed. I'm never trying to like just use my one hand. So I always just use my left hand for support, and I can take photos pretty easily. What I do like about it a lot is that it resembles one of my favorite film cameras, which is the Mamiya 7. So if you look at both of these cameras side by side, up and down, I mean, these cameras are essentially exactly the same. And so this is my favorite camera of all time. Like, I've shot a million cameras. This is my favorite. And this one has a better grip than the Fujifilm, but just the form factor of it, it's very similar. It's familiar for me. And so when I was deciding between the 50R and the 50S, I knew that I wanted the rangefinder style, just because it's just something that, I mean, I shoot that camera every single day, and this is just something that I'm really familiar with. If you're pretty familiar with Fujifilm, you know that Fuji recipes or simulations are a thing, and having the ability to shoot RAW plus fine JPEG or super fine JPEG and kind of bake that Fuji simulation into the JPEGs makes life super easy. I mean, I have from the Fuji Weekly website, I have a bunch of them that I've adapted to the GFX line, and I have a Portra 400, 800, Cine Still, Ektar, HP5 Tri-X, and it's so nice to have the RAW but also the JPEG. The only thing I will say is that if you're shooting a simulation and you think that you're gonna get the RAW plus the JPEG with the recipe and the RAW being normal, it's not like that. So whatever film simulation you have on there is going to slightly bake into the RAW, at least from what I've seen. And you know, the little details with like your highlight slider or your shadows and the dynamic range that you put in and things like that, like that will stay the same depending on what recipe you use. So just be warned, you know, you can't just have a regular RAW photo and shooting a black and white film simulation and think that it's not going to change anything. What I do recommend doing is downloading Fuji Raw Studio, and basically what you do is you shoot everything raw as accurately as you can, keeping everything as right in camera as possible, and then what you do is you add the recipe after the fact. So it gives you more flexibility, and you can actually like see what recipe is gonna or what simulation is going to go well with the photo that you're taking after the fact, because you might not have time, you might not be able to test every single recipe or simulation that you have in your camera, and so it gives you the flexibility to do it after the fact. Okay, people are going to say medium format look isn't a thing, especially on digital, but I'm telling you, it is a thing. This might not be exactly like a Hasselblad or a Phase 1 back on a Hasselblad, all of those true medium format digital backs, but from the A7R III that I was shooting to this camera, there's a noticeable difference, and you might not see it on Instagram, you might not see it on computer screens. When you blow this thing up in a print, and I've got prints all on my walls, you can tell there's something magical about it that you can't explain until you shoot it and you see the files for yourself, because there's just this like creamy separation that just completely takes away every notion that you've ever had, that you doubt about the medium format system. And it truly is just like a magical thing to shoot. Another big thing for my commercial shooters is that I shoot everything with a Tethered Pro cable, and I tether it to Capture One, and Capture One's just way better than Lightroom in a lot of ways. I mean, the ease of use of Lightroom is really nice. Having Lightroom mobile on your phone is really nice if you're just trying to do things quick. But I'm in the studio a lot, I'm in front of clients a lot, I have people on Zoom calls previewing my images as I'm shooting, and you plug this thing in USB-C, it's a USB-C port on here. You plug this thing in, and as soon as you take a photo, that thing is already in your computer in whatever catalog you're trying to do. So just the ease of use of just Fujifilm cameras, I know the X-T4 is kind of the same way. Once you plug in, you just need to start snapping photos, and everything's just automatically getting sent over, and it is super nice. I love using this camera. I love that the USB-C port is on the bottom of the camera rather than on the side, so there's no issues with like having to have your camera in portrait mode and you have a cable sticking out weird. It's going right into the bottom, so no matter how you turn it, it's kind of just right there. And being able to take a photo, and you can blow it up on whatever monitor your client is looking at, and they can see fine details like right away. That makes life super easier. It makes life super easy. Sorry. And I totally recommend Capture One if you've never used it before. It's a great software. It's made my life a lot easier as a professional photographer, and I can't recommend it enough. What I wanted to do a little bit too, before I start talking about the cons, is talk about this camera versus a Sony A7R III, just because I have a lot of experience with them too. And the 42 megapixels for the R3, I know it's higher now, it's like 60 for the R4. Those 42 megapixels stacked up against these 52.4 whatever megapixels, I could totally be botching the numbers. They aren't created equal in my opinion. Like there's just such a difference if you're thinking about going from a full frame to medium format. There's such a difference between the two, and it's not something that I can explain. I just really recommend going to a camera store, renting from a camera rental place, getting your hands on one yourself so you can see the true difference, because more megapixels doesn't mean better quality. It may be sharp, but there's character in medium format, and just because you have 70, 100, whatever megapixel camera you have, sensor size makes a huge difference. So just be wary of that. All right, so those are all the pros. Like I said, amazing color, resolution, form factor, ease with recipes, ease with using Capture One, all of that stuff. But there are some cons, and one major con is autofocus. The autofocus on this camera is absolutely terrible. And I say absolutely terrible because I'm coming from Sony. I know what IAF looks like with Sony, how sticky it is. Like, you can literally have somebody twirling around in 100 circles and it will catch their eye every single time that they turn back around. And this just isn't it. So if you're looking for something super fast, you're shooting sports, you're shooting fast-paced weddings. Like, even when I was shooting weddings and I had this camera, when the bride and groom were just being finished being married and they're walking down the aisle, there's no way that I would trust this. Like, the autofocus just is not fast enough. I would use my X-T4, I would use another camera. But the autofocus on this is so slow and it jumps back and forth. So if you're in a slower paced environment, like for me, I'm a studio photographer, I shoot a lot of products. Whenever I'm shooting products, it's fast enough that I'm not hindered by how slow it is. It will hunt, like the focusing distance on a lot of these. I don't have the macro or another lens, but the focusing distance on this is super hard to deal with when I'm shooting products, because I need, 3 feet in order to have that minimum focusing distance. But even if I'm shooting something backlit or something that's not super high contrast, it's very hard for me to catch focus outside. Like, if I'm even trying to shoot a cloud, for some reason it just won't catch it, and it really is a bummer. But for all of the autofocus issues, all the other pros outweigh that for me, at least. I would totally recommend, if you're used to film, if you're a little bit slower with your shooting, it's perfect. This is an amazing camera. But if that other stuff is what you need, do not buy this. I cannot tell you enough. It will fail you, and if you're getting paid doing whatever you're doing, it's going to be stressful. Another big con to the GFX system in general is that GF lenses are expensive. They are so expensive. This lens is $2,800 or $2,799. The cheaper lenses, I'm looking at getting the 50 3.5, and I think that it's $999, and that's as cheap as you're gonna get it. So if you're looking for a wide variety of lenses with a system that you're trying to just build out, it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take saving up, and it's not something that I love about it. I love that Fujifilm's X series, their lenses are super cheap and they're great lenses. I have the 50 to 140 and the 35 and all of these other lenses, and they're all sub 100 lenses. Well, maybe not the 50 to 140, but you can get lenses for $299, and it's amazing. But if you want quality, and I will tell you, this lens is sharp as hell. It's amazing. I will never sell this lens, this 110 f2. It's that perfect. But it comes with a price. That's what if you're gonna pay for Leica lenses, you're gonna pay a lot of money. That's just the price of nice stuff in life. But if you're making a good chunk of change, I would recommend maybe getting the 50 first, and then getting this 110 next, and then you can go from there. If you really need a macro, you can get the macro, but the macro is also $2K plus. I'm not sure what it is, but I know that I couldn't afford it when I needed it, so I rented it. And it's a bummer that it's so expensive, but I understand why it's so expensive. You pay for quality, and it gives you quality back. Finally, the last little tidbit about this, I shoot for a cleaning company here in Austin, and there are some times where I'm trying to time a spray. Like, let's say I have a bottle of cleaner and the cleaner's spraying, and I'm trying to catch that high speed. This shutter is like a little bit delayed. So if I take a photo, there's just something like, it's not actuating when you think it's actuating. So I'll like try and time it with the model or whoever's spraying the bottle, and I'll be 3, 2, 1. And if I try and press the shutter as that action is happening, sometimes I miss it, and all of a sudden I'll look at capture one and it'll be the trigger of the bottle is completely depressed, and it just doesn't match up. So there's something weird with how this shutter actuates, that it's just not, it's not instantaneous. It's not like the Sonys. And you know, if, let's put this on, all right, well, let's try this. Let's put this on continuous, just so you can see. This is the absolute fastest that this camera can shoot. That's not very fast. If you're doing one of those sprays, you're catching one photo, and that's pretty much it. And sometimes, you know, your point of action is in between those shutters, and it's not fast. I use my X-T4 on continuous high, and I burst the crap out of it, and I'll catch it. But this camera is not that if you need it. It's just a little gripe that I have about it, but you know, I have other options whenever I need to do that. So just keep that in mind. So in conclusion, am I happy with this GFX system? Absolutely. Like, I spent a lot of money, and I was worried about it at first, just because it's new. It's a system I've never operated before. It's a completely different switch from Sony to Fuji, but I won't look back. Like, this has paid for itself in full already with all the jobs that I've gotten with this camera. I use it pretty much every single day in my home studio or at the office, and it's just an amazing camera for what it's worth. I mean, you look at other digital medium format cameras, and nothing even comes close to this price tag. And that's what's crazy about it, because, you know, I paid $3,500 for the lens, $2,700 for the, or $2,700 for the lens, $3,500 for the body, and that was on sale. Right now it's $4,500, and you know, you're getting a one lens and camera combo for, you know, 7 to 8K, and it's a lot of money. You know, it's scary to do, but that money was completely worth it, in my opinion. If you're new to medium format photography, this is the best entry-level camera that I could say that I've used. I mean, I've used other cameras, and obviously with all of my film collection behind me, you know, this is the closest thing that I get back to that Mamiya 7 or the RZ67, and it's just a really good complementary camera for that purpose. So hopefully all this kind of made sense. I haven't really been making a lot of YouTube videos, but people have been commenting and asking me like certain questions about it on my other video that has maybe like 2,500 views. So I've been trying to answer as much as possible. And I mean, I've been shooting a lot, but a lot of it has just been, you know, commercial stuff, and I can't really film behind the scenes of that, and haven't had time to really make a YouTube video, but I really am planning on doing it more. Honestly, like, I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. I'm not trying to make money from YouTube. I'm just trying to make videos for people like me that are looking for answers that I really want to know. So hopefully I can make more videos about it. If you guys have any ideas, if you want me to compare things, I know I did a comparison with the Mamiya 7 and this camera. It was a little bit unfair because I shot this in X-Pan format, and that one is a 6x7. This is a 4x3 sensor, so maybe I can just shoot in 6x7 crop with this one and keep them similar. I can do stuff like that. If you have any questions about the X-T4, I can totally answer that. I use it for video, on gimbals, weddings, commercial shoots. I don't really shoot weddings anymore, but I do have a lot of experience with it. I can totally answer questions with that. If you guys want to see more film stuff, I mean, I've got, you know, a bunch of film cameras that I shoot every day, from 35 to 120 to 620, even though film's hard to find by that. I could totally make videos on that too. I just want to make stuff that's informative, and then stuff that's just fun for me. You know, it's not about the money. I'm just trying to kind of make stuff to make stuff, because if you do photography, it started as a hobby for me, now it's my profession. I still want to keep it as enjoyable as that hobby. So I need to shoot, you know, things for myself, not just going to work every day. You know, it's not a typical 9 to 5, but you know, when you do it every day, it can feel like it. So I'm just gonna make stuff that I enjoy doing, and hopefully, you know, you guys enjoy it too. So again, thank you. Hopefully a new video not 2 months from now. All right.